marvelous morning, awesome afternoon, and exciting evening, I guess, because this is Carla with MindPlore with Carla and Friends. I believe that's the name of the show. And we're talking about new beginnings. And I decided that I was going to start this show with a smile and some laughter because I was yelling at people and I shouldn't be yelling at them. And I'm looking at them as they're strange human beings and they don't know how to listen or do anything right. And that's not fair to them or to me. So this is a new beginning for me coming into the show. And we're starting it with a smile and a laugh. And remember, really, when you're talking about new beginnings, it doesn't happen because of the day or the week or a date. It happens because you make that decision for the day to be a different day. Excuse me, to be an enjoyable day or not so enjoyable, to be a new beginning or bring the junk that you had going even 2 minutes before into the beginning of something new. I love it when Abraham Hicks talks about segment intending. I finally got it today when I was listening before the show and getting the cats fed and all, that we can make that segment and decide what we're going to do with it the day right now, not 2 minutes ago or 2 minutes beyond or even a minute beyond or a minute before. It happens right now. So I am very lucky to have Neville come back, who came to save the day today. So did Jeanne, and so did Nadeem, in order to have a new beginning on a Thursday, because some of the people I had planned on, or at least one of them, couldn't come because of a family emergency. And it's been a little bizarre today. But we're beginning right now and again. And Jeanne, I'm going to give you your old job back and ask you to get started, because you did ask me about the topic even before I had done the link. So can you do that for me, please?
Sure. And I found, based on what you've already said this morning, I found some very interesting quotations. But basically, I want to start with a new beginning is every moment that we're aware. When you become aware, it's a new beginning. And
Go
yeah,
on. Go on.
I found some interesting things that, yeah, according to Buddha, no matter how hard the past is, you can always begin again. And I like to remember that, because you can make a mistake in the moment and then take a deep breath and say, let's reset. Socrates, a great philosopher, said the secret to change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. In other words, don't relive the past, start new. And I have a quick little story. When I was working with a second grade class just before the holidays, the kids were all, what's the right word? A jumble. It's coming up to the holidays. They were getting out early. They didn't want to do their work. There was lots of talking. And I stood in front of them and I took a deep breath, and I made a big deal with my hands going up and my hands coming down like I was breathing. And I said, class, let's do what we can do, like when we're playing on PlayStation. Let's hit reset. And they were like, what? And I said, we're going to start all over again. And we started the day and they behaved. They actually heard what I was saying and they behaved. So we can do that at any moment we put our awareness there, say, let's do a reset. And then the great American actress of silent films and the beginning of the cinema world, Mary Pickford, wrote, "You may have a fresh start any moment you choose. For this thing that we call failure is not the falling down, it's the staying down." So in other words, taking that deep breath and saying, let's do a reset, that's a way to make whatever it is that's going on a lesson that was back then, and now we can learn from it and move forward. And the final thing I wanted to say is, I've been telling every single student in this past year that there's magic in making mistakes. The magic in making mistakes is twofold. One, you learn from the mistake. You learn a lesson and you grow from it and you move on. And the second is, when we make mistakes and we learn from it, new neural pathways are set. So we actually start to grow our brain. That way I encourage them to take a try at something, not to say, I can't do it, but to actually try. And that's an important new beginning.
Now that you said that, that's one thing I always say on the English show. Embrace your mistakes, because your mistakes are a part of learning. And if you never made a mistake, you're never going to learn and you're never going to grow. So it's important to make a mistake. It's important to feel comfortable when you make a mistake. Don't take it as failure. Take it as a step towards success.
Mm-hmm.
And that step is what is needed in order to become successful in what you're doing. I love talking about mistakes. And I made mistakes even a few moments ago, even starting this show. Who really cares? It's just my stupid mind who gets stuck in the mistake.
Okay, can I pull a Carla on you?
I guess so. You're going to do it even if I don't want you to. So go ahead.
That's true. You just said stupid mind. There's no such thing. That's like try. You know, your mind is your mind. It's not smart. It's not stupid. It's not anything but what you make of it. And that's part of what we have to do as we look at the next year and we're planning our goals, is to see where our self-talk is. And it's those little things, because Carla, I hear stupid mind a lot from different people. And it's actually in a way, it's an honorific, if you will, because it's one of those things that we just say to deprecate ourselves and to make ourselves more ingratiated with whoever we're talking to. But in reality, it's negative self-talk. And when we can recognize the negative self-talk, where we're cutting ourselves down for whatever reason, and in this case, I know it was more colloquial and not detrimental, but we have to be aware of that. And that's how we start with our new beginnings, is how we think of ourselves as well. So as you go over and say there's no try all the time, I try it when people use the word stupid, I stop them, because people aren't stupid. The things we do could be, is that I made a case with my son many, many times over. What you did was stupid, but what you are is beautiful. And I separate the deed from person. So you might have, I don't know what the mistake would have been, because everything's been smooth on my end. But you might go, oh drat, I just made a mistake. Well, that's not you. That's just whatever the action it was. And those things can be changed in a nanosecond.
And actually, it's a happening. Many years ago, I remember seeing a movie with Mary Tyler Moore, and I forget who else was in it. And it was called It's a Happening. and everything just happens. And we get stuck in that moment, which in reality is so unimportant. And it's sad that we do that because we actually lose the value of what's really happening. Very good point. What do you think, Nadeem?
Yes, Carla. How are you guys? Neville and Jenny, how are you guys?
Very good.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, as Jenny said, that we need to be self-aware of our surroundings. So every mistake which we do, it's not upon us that we are the guilty one. It's the act which we did it. So, in my opinion, to counter this thing, we should live in the moment. We should be self-aware of ourselves, that what things are triggering us and what things we need to control. So if we have this kind of ability, then we can use that thing to overcome our mistakes or whatever you can call it. So in new beginning, we should more focus on bringing out our self-awareness, and we need to listen carefully, and also we need to do the can't do attitude to we can do attitude. So that's all from my side at starting.
Thank you, Nadeem. And should I be calling you Nadeem or something else? Just
no, it's okay. It's okay, Nadeem. It's okay.
Okay. It's true. We get stuck in moments that really have no reality, but we think they do because we want to think we're so very important, but we're actually very insignificant. Neville?
Are we insignificant? No, we're not insignificant. We're far from it, actually. I'm
in trouble with Neville already. Go on.
No. I'm just clasping my hands very tightly. Be careful what I say. If you remember Tuesday when Jeff was on, he talked about being in the moment, which really is probably the phrase of the 21st century, to be in the moment. And what we need to, I think, probably recognize is that a new beginning is just a new moment. And the consequences of these new moments put together creates an event. An event can be instantaneous, could last seconds, but there are so many moments in those few seconds that unless we're aware, we miss out on some of the moments. So although being in the moment is an easy thing to say, sometimes I find it incredibly hard to do. So let me give you a simple example. You go to the theatre and you watch a comedian that you've seen many times before. You know, you've booked up well in advance, you've paid stupid money to be in a seat with all your friends, and the comedian starts in their performance. And although their performance is well rehearsed, they follow the audience. And not a lot of people realize that. They've got a script, but that script changes slightly dependent upon the feedback they get from the audience. And if you're in the audience and you really want to listen, some of these comedians throw out so many funny gags, you know, or funny sequences in a matter of seconds that you can be in the moment with one and miss the next gag because the brain has gone on a tangent. It's gone somewhere. You're thinking about something that person sparked in your memory as being funny. As simple as walking into a lamppost. When I see some comedians on the stage, and Tommy Cooper was probably one of the classics, died many years ago, and that was situation comedy. But although it was you thought it was well scripted, my goodness, 2 shows. You go one night and you go the following night, and those 2 shows are completely different. And that's where, and I find that when you go to, it's not often that you go to the theatre, because it's a lot of money to go to a London theatre. So the likelihood of you going 2 nights on the trot is pretty remote. But if you've done that, and if you go the 3rd night on the trot, you see a completely different performance every single night. And that's the beauty of being in the moment. But it's also, there's this advantage of being in the moment, because you could miss things. Maybe I'm not explaining myself very well, but it is the fact that be aware of what's around you. And as for the new beginning, there could be so many new beginnings in 15 seconds, but only if you're aware of what's happening. There you go. There's Tums for you.
I like that. How do
Good.
you become aware of what is happening?
Well, how is to practice. Keep doing it.
Okay, but how does that happen?
It's awareness.
Let me finish what I'm saying. We are often so concerned about what happened 2 minutes ago, or worried about what's going to happen in 2 minutes, that we forget what now is often. So what can we do to keep us steady or stable in the now, or in this present segment?
Take a deep breath.
Okay.
You take a deep breath, that brings you back into the now. One of the factoids I love about taking a deep breath is you cannot be stressed in that moment. When you start to breathe and your thinking goes out from that fight or flight part of your brain to the logical frontal lobe, you cannot be stressed. You have to be more aware, and you can take in what's going on, and you can mentally bookmark the moment. You can mentally say, oh yeah, this is wonderful, or oh, I don't like this, whatever is going on. This may seem kind of an odd statement from somebody who's had a very busy international career, but I revel in watching my grandchild, my granddaughter. She's 18 months old. She is in the moment 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
And we need to learn from kids sometimes.
We were a kid, though, Jeanne. We were a kid, and our problem is we've forgotten. We've forgotten, and it's been socialized out of us. You're right.
There's one of the things that we learn as we grow up is how to change who we are to fit in. And when I look at my 18-month-old grandchild who picks up a toy, tosses it around the room, and then gets mad because she doesn't have it in her hand, then runs over and gets another toy, and she's perfectly fine. And then I turn on a Disney movie for a moment. She loves Encanto right now. She hears the music, and whatever's going on stops, and she starts staring at the TV and moving around because she loves the music. It's whatever catches her attention at that moment. That's where she is, 100%. And yes, at 3:30 in the morning, when she wakes up screaming, that's where she is. And you're not going to change her mind, because you have to learn to take the good and the not so good. I'm not going to call it bad because it's just normal. But that when we can learn from children to be present, to be aware, it makes a huge, huge difference in how we act and react in the world. So, before the holidays, it was frenetic for everybody, right? And I walked into a department store just to get something little, and I noticed a young mother. She had 3 kids, all of them exuberant, all of them with great energy. And I, without even being aware of what I did, I looked at the woman and I was like, in my head, she's a single mom. She needs a break. I just knew it. And so I started chatting with the kids and said, is it okay? To her. And she's like, oh, whatever, do whatever. And so I chatted with the kids a little bit, calmed them down. And it was just me being aware, because I was in that position once before, that sometimes it's just a stranger giving the kids a little bit of attention that changes how they are. And I felt like I did a good deed, and all I did was smile and talk to the kids about Santa Claus. It doesn't take much for us to change where we are in that moment, and to change where other people are, to bring them into the present moment. And if the theme is new beginnings, and this is the beginning of a new year. I was all ready to talk about setting goals and looking at, how are we going to grow and what are we going to be? But in reality, I'm thinking, I got to learn from my little Lucy and be in that moment more often. When I'm in front of the second graders, okay, I love them dearly, but yes, they did make me a little tired. But when I'm in front of those second graders teaching, to take a breath and go, okay, what's going on? When literally, when you're in that moment, you can handle just about anything. I remember learning to, in PE as a little kid, learning to go with the flow, and they would tell us to be a willow tree. Stuff comes at you, you just kind of move with it. I remember that quite vividly, and not understanding what they were telling me at the time, because I believe I was 8 or 9. But that's what we have to do every day, is go with that flow, kind of let it go with us. And it might change what our outcome is in that very moment, but it also puts us magically where we should be in that very moment. And if I'm thinking about new beginnings, it's about how to leverage those moments, if you will, how to get the most out of them. And again, I go back to watching the kids. They don't have global goals of making so many sales or changing the conversation about a certain issue, or what's going on in politics. They don't worry about that. They worry about, what am I going to do when mom gives me that peanut butter sandwich? I'm going to eat it. What am I going to do when mom says it's time to take a nap? I'm going to cry. What am I going to do when my friend comes over? We're going to play. Their goals are moment by moment by moment. And when we can do that moment by moment thing and still have a path, then that's a great new beginning. So that puts goals in a different perspective. Goals now become a roadmap versus a driver that puts everything else aside. It's a roadmap to grow.
And
so go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say, and I was going to talk a little bit about how to look out, a year out or whatever. I have a great question when I'm working with clients to set goals. I say, going out a year from now, and you're taking me out to a very expensive lunch, and you're really going all out because you want to say thank you. What is it that I did for you? And that makes them think about, what is it that we're working on? What are the most important things? And that sets a roadmap for us. And that's how I guide through, versus I'm going to make XYZ phone calls. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Those are all detailed tactical plans. When we work moment to moment and we have a vision, a roadmap, then it becomes a little easier to navigate. Carla?
I'm sort of in the thinking mode. Let's go on to Neville or Nadeem, please.
I just want you guys to notice that she was like this when she said she was in thinking mode. Just,
in the
she's
moment.
a moment to moment person and she doesn't even know it.
Possibly. How today's going, I have to be in the moment. Nadeem, do you want to say anything? Or?
Yes, Carla. As Jenny said about kids, that they always live in the moment. So, as per my perspective, or as per my thinking, that kids they have very small world. Okay, they always live in the moment. They don't have minds like us. Whenever we grow up, whenever we are growing year by year, year by year, right now, if we want to live in the moment, we have so many things to we have so many things in our head. Our heads are stuck in so many things, politics, um, everything, any problems, everything are stuck in our problem. But in contrast with kids, they don't think about politics or anything. If they are focusing on one thing, they will only think about that thing. So what's your thought about this, Jenny?
There's a beauty in that simplicity that kids have. They're not thinking about all these other things. I mean, in reality, if you think about it, what is it that I can do to affect global politics? Not a whole lot. Yeah, I'm not a spokesperson that's out there talking to President Biden or any of the world leaders. I would like to. In fact, I'll take the invitation, sir. However, I can affect those around me. And that's where I go back to what kids are doing. I have a grandson who is extremely sensitive, extremely bright, but he's got a friend who is a little bit more, let's say, powerful in the sense that he can make my grandson probably think about or do something that he probably shouldn't, which every kid has. You always have that friend, but there's a power struggle there between the two of them because my grandson hears me, his parents, we're going like, you got to make your own decisions, but he doesn't quite understand that power struggle. But we get to change that and how we handle him. I get to change his world. When I get a chance and he hears me, it affects him, which then affects his friend. And then another school story. I was brand new, really, to teaching, and I looked up. I'm a substitute teacher, to be exact. But I looked up when I was on the playground one day, and I noticed the boys over in the field, and there was some tussling going on. And I walked out, and there was my grandson in the middle of it, and he's thinking, "Oh, But I looked at the kids and I go, what's going on? And they were telling me, he hit me. They're all blaming everybody. I was like, everybody sit down. And I made these probably 10 little boys sit down in the middle of the field. And we had a discussion, about how we act in a game and how important it is to respect each other. And it was very age appropriate. But 5 minutes later, we all get up and I go, now guys, start playing again. And when I walked back out, the other person who was watching the playground was like, what did you just do? And how did that work? And I was like, well, I treated him like I treat my grandson. Well, what? I go, we talked about it. There's nothing more appropriate than to say, what's the lesson we learned? So here I am, boys. Do we hit each other? No. So why are you guys hitting each other? I got mad. What's a better way to handle being mad? I don't know. Well, how about if you stop and you go, look, that's not how we do this. Let's bring in an adult, and that was a year ago. And those kids that were out there still remember that. So I was out in the playground before the holiday break, and one of them came up and goes, remember when? And I was like, yeah, I do. you know, so I changed that little kid's world. That's the power that we have. You know, I can change your world just by talking to you. You can then go out and share, you know, not what I said, but what you interpret what I said, because you have your own intelligence to go with it. So I tell two friends, you tell two friends, and so on and so on and so on. We can change the whole world just by how we act and react. And that's what kids do. They change their worlds. Their little, to us, it seems like a little world, but to them, it's the whole world. It's like if you watch that ant hill, and this is always fascinating. Ants always work together, and there's a bazillion of them. I get that bazillion is not really a number, but that's how many it seems that there are. And they're all working together, but it takes one big hairy foot from a human to step on it, and they're gone. Changes their world. We have that effect just by taking a moment and being in that moment for ourselves. I can change that young mother's world by talking to her kids. Just for 5 seconds changes everything. You know, I love the stories when it's a sad thing, you know, we do a lot of awareness now about suicidal thoughts and depression. And when I hear the story of, I thought my world was ending, and then somebody smiled at me, that reaches in and just tugs at my heart. We have to reach out, even if it's just a smile. That's having that childlike perspective. Change your world here. Don't worry about the big global thing. You know, everybody's scared about inflation. And I say, pfft. And you know, they go, well, what do you mean? Pfft? I go, yeah, we just had 3 years of pandemic. Why wouldn't we have a sling back that we happen to be labeling inflation? That's the normal cycle of life. So get over it. Let's not let it cause fear. Let's just move on. You know, the real estate prices are going down. Oh. What do you mean? Everybody's going to need a house. You're going to buy a house when you need it. You're not going to go buy a house if you don't need it, unless you're an investor. So that the world stuff is important to know. But I'm here. I'm in this moment. I'm in South Sacramento, worried about the floods that are coming because we have 10 inches of water coming our way. Whether the real estate prices go up or down, it's not a big deal. I'm looking at life. Life is a 4-letter word. And it's my perspective to look at right here, right now, what can I change? And that's the childlike part that I love. It's simple. We can go as complicated as we want. We can get into geopolitics and all of that stuff. Great intellectual exercise. Great. But when it comes to actually living life, it's right here, right now. I'm in this zip code. You're in that zip code. You're at night. I'm in the morning. We have different perspectives because of who we live with, where we live, all that kind of thing. And that's the beauty. That's the multicolor nature of the world. And if we can look at it that clearly, our new beginning is clarity. I feel like I was on a soapbox there for a minute. Sorry.
No, it's a good soapbox. It's a great soapbox, not a good one, because it is simple. I used to say to a lot of people when I, retired, left corporate life, I used to say business is simple. It's people that make it complicated, because you can break down a very complicated process into, simple bite-sized chunks. Bite-sized chunks is a phrase that we all know. And why they bite-sized? Because that's as much as I can handle. I can just about handle a bite-size, whether it's the food analogy or it's the life analogy. And again, life is simple. People make it complicated. And the reason they make it complicated is because they know no better. They've always done it that way, and they're not going to change. And that's why new beginnings is really important, because you have to take a different, if you want to change, you have to take a different step. But the good news is the first step you take makes the second one a lot easier. I may have even said this on the show before, Carla, you know, imagine you're on, you're standing still, and now you're going to make a commitment to change. Take one step forward, but I mean a real commitment to change. And I do this on the stage quite frequently, okay? And I said, I want you to be so determined to make that change in that step. I want to see that step in action. And without exception, you know, I've G'd them up to such a height to take that first step. They take the first step and they can't stop. They end up taking a second and a third because the momentum is carrying them through, which is, it's great because that's what happens. If you put all the effort, all the commitment into making that first step, however difficult that was, now do it. Make that commitment. You'll find it really hard to stop because you're having so much fun going forward, the momentum will carry you through. And kids know that. When they first start to learn to walk, they'll be doddering around a little bit. And then after a while, guess what? The next thought on their mind is to run. They can't even spell the word run. They don't even know the concept of the word run, but boy, are they going to run. And they get to the terrible twos and they're running under tables and you can't catch them. It's every parent's nightmare. You've been there before, Jeanne. I know. I mean, it's simple stuff, isn't it? But even Nadeem's laughing. You got kids?
Yeah,
baby
I
game,
got
yeah.
It's amazingly, it's amazing how simple life really is and how complicated we try to make it. And part of me wants to say that that's kind of a belated narcissism in a sense. The more complicated we make it, the more
important we become.
Yeah, and in reality, and I learned this in corporate America, doesn't matter who you are, you're all replaceable. You know, when it really comes down to it. You know, and that reality was a heck of an eye-opener for me in my younger years. I was like, no, I'm special. Nope, not really. There are 250,000 people out there that do what I do, just in America alone. 250,000. Could you imagine if I went global? It's a lot of numbers. Then you start to feel like that little ant. You have to do what you do with your team, you know, and you have to be who you are, but you also have to have something else, not just work. And being part of the moment, being aware of that moment and looking at new beginnings constantly allows us to live life. And if there's one lesson I personally want to learn this year, it's how to be more active in life, not in work. I want to trade my 4-letter words around. I love to work, but I want to work to live, not to live to work. And that's a new beginning, changing perspective. And that's just looking at moving your hand just a little bit so your perspective and your perception changes. Just a little, not a big thing. It's taking that deep breath at a pivotal moment and go, all right, let's reset and moving forward. What you got, Carla? You want to jump in?
What I have is a participant who has to leave, and I would like to hear what he has to say before he takes off.
I think I probably said more than enough, Carla, today to get people thinking about it. But just when it comes to new beginnings, it can be frightening. But literally every day is a new beginning. If you look at it that way, you know, it's a new day. Yesterday could be raining, today could be sunshine. Even the world recognizes it's a new beginning. So just, someone said earlier, go with the flow. Well, go with the flow as long as that's where you want to go. If you think there's a better way, take it. You can be criticized for it, but the worst critic is going to be yourself if you don't take that opportunity. So that's a new beginning, really. And again, just take the first step, because the second one makes a lot more sense.
And also, if you think about it, we wouldn't have these devices, computers, the internet, airplanes, trains, if someone hadn't taken the first step.
Correct.
And something new.
Yep.
This is what this is all about, a new beginning. A new beginning of a new year, but the new beginning can start right now. It didn't need to start at midnight on December 31st. It can start this moment. It can start 10 minutes from now if you're not ready to do it, or an hour or 2 weeks from now. It's not the minute. It's not a date that someone else put on it. It's a date that you yourself put on what you need to do. And Neville, thank you so much for coming today.
No, please don't stop here. Just continue it, because this is really good stuff. I think people will learn a lot. But be good to see you all. So see you soon.
I will be
Yeah,
calling you soon, Neville.
God
Bye.
bless everyone. Bye.
Where? Oh, okay. Jeanne, do you want to continue?
I forgot where I was.
Or Nadeem, do you want to add something to this?
It's the new beginning.
Yeah, the new beginning. As we can simply say that child are like, they are not overthinkers. We are the grown-ups, we are the overthinkers. We think too much. We miss the opportunity to live in the moment. But the child, they just live in the moment. If they are in the moment, they will just think about that moment. So we are the grown ones who always think too much. Or we can say that it's our, as we are grown, as we are aging, everything which all the knowledge which we are putting into our minds, so it keeps our mind struggling, searching for everything. So that's why I think we are overthinkers.
Yeah, I think that there's nothing wrong with being an overthinker. There's nothing wrong with thinking too much. It's finding balance. And, you know, I laughingly tell people I have a PhD in weight loss, because I've, tried so many different things. But what I learned and what I use now is called moderation. I don't say anything to myself to make me feel bad. If I want a chocolate chip cookie, I'm going to get a chocolate chip cookie, because I've learned if I don't, later on, I'm going to want 6 chocolate chip cookies. So it's all about moderation and balance. And it's the same in how we face our world. Do you have a goal? Yes. Okay, good. What is that goal? My goal is, so how are you going to get there? And kind of laying out that roadmap, but then looking at life in general, when it says turn right and you really want to turn left, sometimes you need to turn right on that roadmap and take a little detour. There's nothing wrong with that. It's adding that balance. I want, say, I have a grandson who's extremely bright, and I want him to really work at a certain thing, and he's not interested. Okay, I can't force him. I could try, but I can't. However, I can make it more interesting. So in the case of this grandson, he likes to say he's a coder. He's a coder for his age, but I got him a bunch of information on and books on coding. So where I'm trying to get him to read more, like actual books, not just on the computer. He's reading because I got him books on coding. I found what he was interested in. So I had to take a little detour and kind of figure out what he's interested in. And then, you know, it seems to be working because he's jumped into it with both feet. I love it. But that's what we have to do. We have to look for the detours and look for what's better for them. And that's one of the things that I coach, is how to communicate to people to get what you want done, is to say, what is in it for them? It's the one question we have on just about anything. No matter what you're going to ask me about, the question is, what's in it for me? That is always drives the discussion. And if you can put yourself in that person's shoe and go, what's in it for them? Find the benefits. You can change how they act or react. And I did that with my son when he had an issue when he was younger. I realized he was into Japanese anime. So guess what we got? We got lots of Japanese anime books, and he started to read. You know, so you find out what they're interested in and kind of guide them, and they do what you want. You know, I want somebody to buy something. I'm going to figure out, why do they want to buy it? Why do they need this whatchamajigget? You know, what's it going to do for them? And that's basic, you know, marketing, yes, but how you communicate it is where the magic is. So that simplistic thinking, taking a moment for that more simplistic childlike thinking, is critical. You know, bringing it down. As a writer working in corporate America, I used to have to tell engineers, I need to break this down to the 8th grade level, because I want somebody, you know, at a newspaper to write about it. So I'm going to ask you really basic questions. In other words, in my head, I don't know what you're talking about, but I need to understand it. But you can't think that I'm silly and not smart. You know, on the other hand, I broke it down to, I need to support you with this. I have to break down the language. I'm going to say, what do you mean by this? You know, so we found a nice happy medium. So I was able to write about this technology so that people understood. Even though in my mind, I'm thinking, you should have studied this more, you know, and I'm beating myself up. But to the engineer, I have to write this to the 8th grade level. So I'm going to ask you 8th grade level questions, you know, and he was okay with that. So it's how we present ourselves, how we balance the complex thinking you were talking about, and that simplistic thinking that we need in life, that uncomplicated, not really simplistic, uncomplicated thinking, where it's like, I need to open the door. Yes, open the door. I need to open the door. What's the program that I need to write? Because we got to make sure that the AI works so that the automated door handle will flip. You know, kind of. I have a picture of 3 people standing in front of the door and a little kid coming up and just going, "This is what you do," yeah, and opening the door. You know, finding that balance. That's an important part of every new beginning. What's the balance? Is it going to get me where I need to be?
Yes, Jenny, you are right. But furthermore, all these things are come from self-awareness, right? If we are self-aware of ourselves, then all these things, finding the balance about our thinking, our thoughts, then it will be easy for us. What do you think?
It's funny, you just said that, and what went in my mind was, we actually don't want easy, do we? We want it to be complex so that we could go, look what I did.
Yes.
In reality, look what I did. I opened the door. You know, yeah, you did what you've been doing since you were a child. But we want complex because we think that makes us more important, but self-awareness is important. And understanding our own motivation is just as important as understanding the other person's motivation. It all comes down to taking that deep breath. You know, I found it fascinating when I started to look into stress management and relaxing, that it came down to a deep breath, and changing physiologically, it changes where your brain is, where your mind is, all this stuff that goes into taking a deep breath. And in reality, we learned that the day we were born. We took that gulp, and if we didn't, the doctor spanked us for a minute so we would,
Yeah.
We've learned how to do it. We've also learned to breathe up here, because that's what we live, versus breathing in our, deep breathing down into our gut, because that's what refreshes us and gives us the spirit we need, that relaxation, and frees up our mind from stress. There's lots of things that go into that deep breath, and in reality, it's just
Deep breath.
yeah. I was listening to a meditation. They were going, now we're going to go into, what did she call it? Oh man, I can't think of the word she called it, but she called it some kind of breathing. And it was like, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out. I'm like, there's nothing scientific about that. It's timed breathing, but it was to get people in the meditation to do that deeper breath and hold it and absorb the oxygen. So she made a whole science out of it. And it was just, and every time we take that deep breath, it is a new beginning, because we can reset where our left and right brain are, and help them, see actually what's going on here in the moment. Carla, you're back with us.
I've been with you.
Of course you have, but I saw you concentrating, so I thought something was going on.
No, I'm too tired to concentrate.
Well, that's one way to reset.
But that's also why we sleep, so we reset for the next day. That's why we meditate. But when you brought in that whole idea of the breath, breathing in and breathing out, we can reset at any time, any moment, at any time of the day. It doesn't need to be when you wake up. It doesn't need to be when you go to sleep. It could be any time. And we forget to do it.
Yeah, there's an exercise that I was taught way back in my younger years, when I thought I knew everything. Nadeem, how when you're in your 20s and 30s, you know everything. Yeah. It was back then.
Yeah.
This therapist I was working with told me every time I hit a stop sign or a stoplight, to take 3 deep breaths. And it was just simple, no counting, no holding, just all the way. She said, I want your abdomen to move out, and I want it to move back in. And so those 3 breaths gave me a moment without, she knew better than to explain it to me, because I was in that complicated thinking mode. Where's the magic? What's it got to do? How do I have to do it? She said, just move your abdomen out and move it back in. And in those 3 breaths, you start to manage your stress. And I thought, okay, I can do this, but that's silly. That's really silly. And about a couple weeks later, it was maybe 2 weeks later, I'm in the car. My son is 3 at the time, 3 or 4, but we were on the highway, and it's usually pretty busy. And somebody speeds up beside me and then cuts in front of me, and I have to slam the brakes, and my arm goes out, and that mom moved to hold the kid back. And instead of coming out with expletives that, a 3-year-old shouldn't hear, I looked at him and I smiled, and I said, well, there's somebody that needs to get somewhere 5 seconds faster than us. And we both laughed. And when I was laughing, I thought, that's a different reaction. And I became aware in that moment that the breathing is working. I wasn't stressed and, angry and ready to lash out at the world. And that's what started me on the journey to learn about the power of breath, because it had to take something that seemingly innocuous to get me to change how I thought about it. Because I literally was like, okay, I'll do it, but it's kind of silly and it won't make any difference. Wow, it made a huge difference and started me on a whole new path. That stress management that I was sent to her to deal with was like, all of a sudden it makes sense, and I'm managing stress and I've got things under control, and I'm not screaming and yelling. My kid's going to have a better life. I'm going to do better at work. All this stuff. And I became an expert at managing crisis communication, because I could say in the midst of a terrible crisis, what's really going on? What do we need to do? Let's get it together. Here's step 1. Here's step 2. Here's step 3. And then people could go do what they had to do, because I could take a deep breath at that moment, at that particular time, and whoever's in front of me ends up taking the deep breath too. So that's how I changed the world, my world. So I became known as the breathing lady. Everybody heard me go, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. Okay, let's take a deep breath. And it seems innocuous. And it changes on a cellular level how people are acting and reacting.
And actually, we often forget that it is the breath that connects us. It's the breath that allows us to communicate. It's the breath that makes us human. And being aware of the breath takes it to the next level. Believe it or not, we have been speaking for over an hour. Did you realize that?
Nope.
Live in the moment.
Fun. Yeah, I was having fun talking to Nadeem.
So I want to get your final thoughts very quickly so we can allow those who may be watching it to take a break now. Nadeem?
Yeah, I will just say live in the moment, be like a kid, and enjoy your life. Do whatever you like.
Thank you.
I want to build on that. I like having a roadmap. So having a goal set in mind of where you want to go is important, but also be in the moment, know what needs to be done right then and right there, enjoy it. That's why we say smell the roses. That's why we say take a walk in the forest. Be aware that we are significant. What we do is significant in our own worlds, and we can affect change not only amongst ourselves, but amongst all those around us. So every time we make a new beginning, we start a ripple effect.
Right. And it's what we do in that new beginning that makes it either a good ripple or a poor ripple. But even if it's a poor ripple, it doesn't matter, because we can take another breath and turn it around again. And with that, we are going to end this show now. And I believe I'll be back on Tuesday. I really have no idea what's going to happen in my life in the next minute. But MindPlore will continue, as it has for over 3 years now, on Tuesday. And I don't know if it'll be a new beginning or an old beginning, but it will be a beginning. Can we wave goodbye? Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Bye.